This happened just a few nights after I moved in. I thought relocating would be peaceful and allow me to focus on my work without the constant noise of the city. The house was old and creaked a lot, but I found its charm comforting, or at least I thought so. The walls were bare and the floors were worn. The quiet was odd, a stark contrast to what I was used to. I was still getting settled, but something nagged at me. The silence felt heavy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. On the third night, I woke up to soft tapping at my bedroom window. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. I tried to ignore it, but the tapping continued. It was faint, almost like it was testing my nerves. My heart started to race. I sat up and listened. The sound was still there. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, walking slowly towards the window. I pulled back the curtain and looked outside, but all I saw were shadows. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, yet I felt a chill run down my spine. The tapping grew louder, turning into rhythmic knocks. I felt anxious and uncertain. I couldn't ignore it any longer. As twilight fell, I noticed movement in my yard. Shadows flickered at the edge of the trees, and it felt like someone was watching me. I brushed my hands against the window frame, trying to steady my racing heart. The old house creaked around me, amplifying my nerves. Then I spotted it. A figure standing at the edge of the park, partially hidden by the trees, their gaze fixed on my house. My stomach twisted in knots as panic set in. I told myself it was my imagination, but every instinct screamed it was real. It was dark, but I could tell the figure was tall, too tall. I stumbled back, shaking my head. I didn't want to see any more. The next day I found small items on my porch. A child's toy, a broken watch. None of it was mine. I felt sick. How did it get there? I hurried inside, locking the door behind me. There was no rational explanation, only a gnawing uncertainty that something wasn't right. That night I tried to distract myself with work. My nerves were on edge. Then the tapping came again, more urgent this time. I could hear it clearly. It sounded like someone was trying to get in. My hands trembled as I approached the window again. Each step felt heavy. I pulled back the curtain slowly, bracing myself for what I might see, and then I gasped. The same figure stood there, but now they were much closer. "I see you," they said softly. I froze, unable to respond. My mind raced as I blinked, and in an instant, they vanished. The window was empty, but I felt their presence lingering, and I knew my nightmares were just beginning. The next morning the sunlight crept through the curtains, but it did little to ease my racing heart. I hardly slept, replaying the figure's haunting words in my mind. "I see you." Who were they? Why were they watching me? I needed to get out of the house. Perhaps some fresh air would ground me. I grabbed my things and headed to a nearby cafe, hoping the bustle of people would distract me. But the clatter of cups and chatter of voices only reminded me of how isolated I felt. The unease nagged at me like an uninvited guest, refusing to leave. While sitting at a small table near the window, I pulled out my laptop. I decided to research the area, looking for anything about my neighborhood's past. Maybe there were stories about the house or even the park. As I browsed articles, I came across a local legend about the woods behind my house. People spoke of sightings of a tall figure that wandered the trees. Some claimed it was a restless spirit, while others referred to it as an omen of misfortune. Chills ran down my spine. This was not comforting news. The more I read, the more uneasy I felt. I was contemplating whether to leave and head back home when a voice interrupted my thoughts. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I looked up to find an older woman, her gray hair pulled back into a tight bun. She had a friendly smile, but her brown eyes carried a hint of concern. "I just moved in nearby," I replied, offering her a faint smile in return. "It's been a bit of an adjustment." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Be careful in those woods. Not everyone who wanders in comes out whole." My heart raced again. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, her gaze shifted over my shoulder. I turned slightly but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. When I looked back, she was gone. The cafe bustled with life around me, but I felt the world had closed in. The strange warnings echoed in my mind. I fled the cafe with more questions than answers. Back at home, I felt as though a shadow clung to me. I avoided the windows, acutely aware of the view they offered. I spent the evening trying to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering. I kept hearing faint noises around the house, but every time I stopped to listen, it was just the old building settling. I couldn't let my imagination spiral out of control. As night fell, I resolved to confront my fears. I walked toward the rear of the house, peering through the window into the darkening garden. I tried to convince myself it was just my paranoia, but my gut twisted. That was when I saw it again. A figure flitting among the trees, more defined this time. My breath hitched in my throat. Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered and went dark. My heart raced as I moved away from the window. Just as I reached for my phone, I felt a cold breeze wash over me, sending a shiver through my body. In the silence, I heard a soft voice murmuring from outside. It wasn't just in my head. Someone was out there. I crept back to the window, my pulse pounding in my ears. Peering outside, I braced myself for whatever lay ahead. As I drew the curtain aside, it hit me. This time the figure was right at the edge of the yard, looking directly at me. A chill threaded through my veins as their eyes seemed to glow in the dark. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart hammering against my ribs. The darkness of the room pressed in on me. It took a moment to remember where I was. The power was out, and I realized I must have passed out by the window. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Had I really seen that figure? Was it just my imagination? I fumbled for my phone, the only source of light in the pitch-black room. When I managed to turn it on, the screen illuminated my surroundings, casting eerie shadows against the walls. I took a deep breath and sat up, trying to shake off the lingering fear. The house was unnaturally quiet. I listened intently for any sounds. The soft whispering from before was gone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My instincts screamed at me to leave the house, to escape whatever was lingering, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I needed to be strong. I reached for a flashlight in my bag, trying to focus on practicalities. As I stood and made my way to the door, a sudden noise froze me in place. A soft thud, like something heavy had fallen in the hallway. I hesitated, fearing what lay beyond. I felt ridiculous. I was an adult, not some frightened child. I grabbed the flashlight and clutched it tightly in my hand. Taking a cautious step, I opened the door. The hallway loomed before me, cloaked in darkness. I flicked on the flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows. It felt both reassuring and terrifying. I stepped out, my heartbeat echoing louder than ever. "Hello?" My voice trembled. Silence answered me. I moved slowly, the flashlight beam tracing the walls. I reached the staircase and peered down, but saw nothing. A rustling sound drifted from the direction of the kitchen, and my breath caught in my throat. I was sure I had locked the back door. Gathering my courage, I headed toward the kitchen. I could feel the tension of every corner pressing in, as if something was about to leap out at me. I approached the door, each step heavier than the last. Then, from the kitchen, I saw it. A shadow darted past the window, quick and deliberate, and my stomach twisted. I took a rattling breath, my heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. I creaked the door open wider and aimed the flashlight toward the window. Nothing. Only the moonlight filtering through the trees. But just as I exhaled, thinking maybe my mind was playing tricks again, I noticed something by the window. A small mound of dirt. Like a handful had been scooped from the earth. I could feel the dread pooling in my gut. I moved closer, my pulse quickening. That's when I noticed something glimmering beneath the dirt. I knelt down and brushed the dirt away with shaking hands, revealing what looked like a locket, tarnished and old. My breath caught as I opened it, expecting an image inside. Instead, it was empty. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the living room, causing me to jump back. The flashlight flickered, and panic surged through me. I had to go. I couldn't deal with whatever was haunting this place anymore. Then from behind me I heard a familiar voice. "I see you." I spun around and my breath caught again. The figure stood just outside the door, tall and shrouded in shadows, its eyes glowing. All my resolve shattered as I stumbled back, the locket clattering to the floor. Now I knew what I had to do. I had to find out who or what that figure was before it found me. The figure loomed closer, its eyes piercing through the darkness. I felt frozen, caught between fight and flight. My mind was racing, trying to piece together my next move. I reached for the flashlight, feeling my fingers tremble. "Who are you?" I managed to call out, my voice strained. The figure paused as if considering my question, then stepped closer. My heart pounded so loudly I worried it might echo in the silence. I had to regain control. I couldn't let fear swallow me. "Get back," I yelled, thrusting the flashlight forward, the beam illuminating the floorboards but never touching the figure. There was something unsettling about how it stayed just out of reach. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. In a split-second decision, I turned and bolted past the kitchen, through the hallway and into the living room. I needed to find my phone for a signal, try to call someone, anyone. But the power was still out, and the room felt consuming in its inky darkness. I could only hear the chilling sound of my quickened breathing and footsteps echoing. I scanned the space with the flashlight, desperate to find my escape. Everything felt strange, as if the room was shifted around me. I spotted the front door, instinctually knowing I couldn't just leave. What if the figure was waiting outside? Then I noticed something out of place, a shadow beneath the coffee table, barely noticeable. I knelt down, heart racing again, forcing myself not to look around at the looming darkness. I reached forward and felt something glassy under my fingertips. Carefully, I pulled it into the light, a small piece of mirror, cracked and dusty. As I held it up, I caught my reflection, and that's when I saw it behind me. The figure was no longer at the door. It was standing right behind me, its breath as cold as ice against my skin. I didn't dare turn around but kept my gaze fixed on the cracked mirror. Its voice whispered softly, "You're not supposed to be here." I gasped, the shock sending panic through my body. I scrambled to my feet and raced toward the back of the house. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed to get away from that voice. I burst into the bathroom and slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. My hands shook as I leaned against the cool tile wall, the flashlight beam flickering above. Then, I heard it again, the soft, deliberate knocking on the door. "Let me in. We need to talk." I pressed myself against the wall, fighting the urge to respond. Whoever, or whatever, this figure was, it didn't sound threatening, but that only heightened my confusion. What did it want from me? The knocking grew more insistent, almost desperate. "It's important you listen. You can't hide forever." Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and called 911, but the screen blinked with "no service." Not now. I needed to figure out who was behind that door, and why it felt like they knew more than I did. I glanced at the mirror again, and that's when it hit me, a realization that sent shivers down my spine. The figure's eyes weren't just glowing. They were familiar, like the eyes of someone I once knew. Just then, the knocking stopped, and I heard a soft whisper through the door. "I can help you." My heart raced. What help could it offer? And how would I know if I could trust it? I had to make a choice, and every option felt wrong. But before I could decide, the lights flickered back on all at once, flooding the room with brightness. I was no longer alone. I blinked against the sudden brightness, the sharp light overwhelming my senses. The bathroom was as it always was, neatly tiled, the shower curtain a faded shade of blue. But the mirror showed me something different. The reflection behind me wasn't what I expected to see. Instead of my own anxious face, the mirror framed the figure. It stood still, appearing just as it had in the darkness, skin pale and eyes bright, locked onto mine. I recoiled, stumbling back until I hit the sink. My breath quickened again, and suddenly the stable world around me felt unnervingly fragile. "Stay away!" I shouted, my voice tremulous. But the figure merely tilted its head, expression unreadable. The sudden clash of reality with the impossible felt like I was trapped in a dream. The knocking on the door resumed, more urgent this time. "Let me in, this is the only way." I fought the urge to respond. What way? I had no idea what was happening. The figure behind me pressed closer, tilting its head again as if studying me. Panic surged anew. "Please," it pleaded, its voice softer now, almost imploring. "You think I want to hurt you?" That only made my heart race faster. I darted my eyes back and forth between the mirror and the door. Each moment felt like a tangled web tightening around me. I knew I had to act. I couldn't stay here, trapped between whatever that thing was and the person on the other side of the door. With a burst of resolve, I lunged for the door handle, unlocking it. I may not have known the figure's intentions, but I was equally terrified of being trapped in this room, facing it alone. Before I could open the door, it flew open with a creak, revealing an empty hallway. I stepped out cautiously, checking behind me. The figure hadn't followed me into the hallway. I turned back to the mirror, but it only reflected my worried face and the closed bathroom door behind me. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the living room. The atmosphere felt thick, almost suffocating. I knew I wasn't alone. "What do you want?" I called out into the dim light, my voice cracking slightly. I hoped somehow the figure would hear me. Laughter echoed through the house, a sound so chilling it sent tremors down my spine. "You'll find out soon," it said, somehow sounding close even though I was alone in the room. I glanced around, searching for any sign of where the voice came from. And then I saw it. A series of white scratches trailing along the wall, leading toward the hallway. I followed the marks, my pulse racing. They felt warning-like, leading me deeper into the unknown. Each scratch seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, urging me forward. As I approached the end of the hallway, I stopped dead. The last room in the house, the one that had always been locked, stood wide open. The door creaked, making it seem even more ominous. A dark haze lingered just inside, and the whispers grew louder, insistent. "Come in, we need to talk." The voice flowed through the air, wrapping around me like a cold shadow. I hesitated, heart pounding against my rib cage. I had to know. I stepped forward, ready to face whatever waited within, but just as I crossed the threshold, everything went dark again. The light flickered and then died, leaving me in the pitch black once more. That's when I heard it, the soft patter of footsteps behind me. I froze, my breath stuttering as the footsteps grew louder. They were slow, deliberate, creeping closer. I wanted to turn and run, but something kept me rooted. A strange mix of fear and curiosity tightened around me. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice barely a breath. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around me like a blanket. I strained to hear the footsteps, but they had stopped. A chill ran down my spine. Had it sensed my fear, or was it waiting for me to make a move? I took a cautious step back, my feet guiding me toward the doorway. Just as I resolved to escape, the darkness shifted. An outline emerged, a figure slinking out of the void, tall and cat-like. I held my breath, heart hammering. "It's just me," the voice came, smooth with a hint of mischief. I squinted, trying to make out the features of the face that belonged to the voice. "Liam." My pulse steadied slightly, but confusion still bubbled in my gut. "What are you doing here?" I managed to say, my voice shaky with disbelief. "I told you I had to see you," he replied, stepping fully into the faint light from the hallway. His smile was wide, but his eyes held an intensity that made me uneasy. "I wanted to help you understand." "Understand what?" I snapped, irritation slicing through my fear. "This is insane. I just saw something in the mirror." "Don't you get it?" His excitement cracked through his exterior. "You need to listen. You're connected to it." He stepped closer. His presence loomed over me, a predatory energy causing my skin to prickle. I glanced back toward the hallway, half expecting that cold voice to return. Did he know? Had he seen it too? Before I could ask, a sudden gust of wind swept through the open door of the last room, slamming it against the wall. The sound startled me, and I instinctively took a step back. "Stay away from there," Liam shouted, his expression twisting with urgency. "Why? What's in there?" I shrieked, fear rising again. "It's where it wants you. You can't let it pull you in," he warned. "You don't know what will happen." The air felt electric. I glanced again at the door, feeling an uncanny urge to enter. "But I have to know," I cried, frustration spilling over. "No!" he shouted, grabbing my arm tightly. "You have to choose. If you go in there, it will never let you go." His grip was firm, but I could feel my resolve faltering. Something was calling to me from that room, a whisper that sounded like my name. "I found a way to fight it," he said, desperation in his voice. "But you have to trust me." Trust him. Did I even have a choice? The whispers were rising, and I could feel the pull. It was stronger than before. But as I looked into Liam's eyes, I saw something beneath the bravado. The same fear I felt. Then, in that moment of indecision, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the space like a spotlight just for us. But what I saw stole my breath away. The room was no longer empty. The figure stood in the doorway, watching us with an unearthly gaze. And I knew then that whatever choice I made, time was running out. My heart dropped as the figure loomed closer, its dark silhouette stealing the breath from my lungs. I barely registered Liam's hand still gripping my arm, his anxious gaze flicking between me and the being in the doorway. "What is that?" I whispered, terror clawing at my throat. Liam opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off as the figure stepped into the light. It was tall, perhaps too tall, its limbs impossibly long. I couldn't see its face clearly, but the way it moved made my skin crawl. The air hung thick with a sense of dread. "We need to go," Liam said urgently, his grip tightening. He pulled me back, but the figure didn't advance. Instead, it seemed to study us, its head tilting slightly to one side. "Don't let it trick you," Liam warned, his voice low and tenuous. "It may appear harmless, but it's not. We're supposed to stay away. It feeds off curiosity." Not harmless? My mind raced as I fought the urge to step closer. I could feel a bizarre connection rippling through the air between us. It felt like a thread leading from my core to the figure, something deeper than fear, a fascination I couldn't shake. "Liam, what do you know about this thing?" I demanded, pulling back against his grip. "You keep saying you can help, but this doesn't feel like help. It feels like, I don't know, something much worse." Before he could answer, the figure took another step forward, the shadows around it flickering like candle flames. A faint voice drifted through the air, hushed yet familiar. My name, whispered like a secret. "See?" Liam said, his expression shifting between determination and panic. "It's reaching for you. You have to fight it." "Fight what? I don't even know what it is," I shouted, feeling the weight of confusion mixing with the terror. Why was it calling for me? What connection did I have with something so dark? "I'll explain everything, just trust me," he cried, glancing again at the doorway. "Retreat, we have to get away now." But I felt rooted in place. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a tempest. I turned to look at the figure, and for an instant, I thought I saw something softer in its gaze, an echo of longing perhaps, but it vanished too quickly to grasp. Suddenly the lights flickered again, plunging us back into a web of shadows. There was no context anymore, just the rush of fear and the pulsing call of the figure. Then, without warning, the darkness swallowed us, an enveloping blackness that choked the air from my lungs. I gasped, instinctively reaching for Liam, but when I turned, he was gone. "Liam?" I called into the void, my voice trembling. Panic surged through me. "Liam, where are you?" I felt a presence behind me as if the figure had moved closer. I strained to listen over the rising fear in my chest, desperate for a response. In that moment, the darkness around me shifted, and I caught a glimpse of the doorway reflecting a wavering light again. That's when I saw it, a reflection not just of the room but an entire scene unfolding. It was a vision of me, of my past, and worst of all, the moment before everything changed, the moment I couldn't quite remember. And then with a surge that knocked me to my knees, I understood. This wasn't just a choice. It was my past clawing its way back to me, and I had to decide whether to face it, or fall deeper into the unknown. The darkness felt heavy, smothering me as I knelt on the floor. I couldn't orient myself. The figure was gone, but its presence lingered like a chilling whisper in my ear. My heart raced, and I fought to steady my breathing. The vision I'd seen hung at the edges of my mind. What did it want from me? I pushed myself up, fumbling to regain my balance. "Liam!" I yelled again, desperate for any sign of him. There was only silence, the kind that wrapped around you like a thick blanket, isolating you from everything familiar. Cautiously, I took a step forward, the floor creaking beneath my weight. I was still in the room, but it felt transformed by the shadows. I noticed the flickering light again, drawing me toward it like a moth to a flame. The doorway shimmered, pulsing with an inviting glow. I hesitated, fear intertwining with curiosity. What if this was a trap? What if I stepped through and never returned? But the weight of my past pressed against me, nudging me to uncover the hidden truth. As I approached the door, the vision intensified, filling my head with images. There I was, laughing with friends, sunlight washing over us. Then the scene shifted, my laughter fading, faces twisted in concern. Panic swept through me. I wanted to look away, but that would be a mistake. I needed to understand what had happened. Another step, and I was closer. The shadows twisted like tendrils reaching for me. Just then, the door slammed shut behind me, and I spun around, heart pounding again. The darkness felt alive, like it was trying to trap me in its embrace. "No!" I cried out instinctively, driven by a primal urge to escape. But the darkness shifted once more, forming a barrier against the door. I was trapped, and then I heard it again. My name, soft, almost sweet. My breath hitched. It wasn't coming from the figure. It felt like it was echoing from my own mind, the familiar sound sparking memories I thought were lost. "Please, just show me." My voice trembled as I sought out the figure in the shadows. "I need to know what happened." A cold wind brushed past me, swirls of mist gathering in front of the doorway. Slowly, the figure began to materialize again, the whispers growing louder like a crowd building in anticipation. This time, I wouldn't turn away. I couldn't. I inched closer, the memories flooding back through the vision. I could see flashes of a confrontation, a sudden silence, the heaviness in the air as everything shifted, plunging me into the darkness now surrounding me. Then, just as quickly, it all vanished, leaving me breathless. In its place stood something new, a swirling mass of colors and shapes that felt almost alive, beckoning me to step closer. I took a deep breath, feeling a tremor of recognition. This was it, the moment I could reclaim part of myself, or seal my fate in a shadowy confusion. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the surface of the light. Then, without warning, the door behind me crackled, a thunderous rumble shaking the very ground beneath my feet. I turned, a sudden surge of panic gripping my heart. Someone was trying to get in. "Liam?" I shouted, but only the darkness answered. Behind me, a light began to flicker, illuminating a shape with undeniable familiarity. The figure in the door had returned, and it wasn't alone. The shape in the doorway was unmistakable. It was Liam, but there was something off about him. Shadows flickered across his face, twisting his expression into something I couldn't quite read. Beside him stood another figure, tall and cloaked, their features hidden beneath a dark hood. "Liam!" I yelled, my heart racing. I stumbled back a step, panic rising in my throat. "What's happening? Who's with you?" The cloaked figure stirred, and I felt a chill spread through the room. The air thickened, and a strange sense of foreboding wrapped around me. "You shouldn't be here," it intoned, its voice echoing like a distant whisper. "What do you mean?" I called, glancing at Liam. He remained silent, his eyes wide and unblinking, as if caught between two worlds. I wanted to reach for him, to pull him back to me, but the shadows seemed to squeeze tighter around me. "Liam, please, talk to me." The figure on the threshold stepped closer, and Liam finally blinked, as if waking from a dream. "You need to go," he murmured, his voice trembling. "You can't stay here." "Why? What's wrong?" I pressed, confusion mixing with dread. I felt the warmth of the light behind me, that inviting glow flickering between my fingers. I longed to step into it, but fear rooted me to the ground. "Please," Liam said, an urgency creeping into his tone. "We can't let it take you too." I glanced at the cloaked figure, feeling the weight of its gaze. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Who are you?" "Something is coming," it hissed, raising a hand that seemed to absorb the light. "You must decide. The door is closing." Before I could respond, the darkness began to stretch and contract, the light behind me dimming as if it was being swallowed whole. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, an insistent beat that echoed the urgency of the situation. "Make a choice," Liam shouted, his hands gripping the doorway. "You can't stay between worlds." I felt the pull of the swirling mass of colors, tantalizing and terrifying all at once. What lay within that light? I had to know, but the shadows around me whispered doubts, warnings of what stepping through might cost. "Liam, I don't want to lose you," I said, my voice trembling. Everything in me fought against that idea. But could I trust him? Could I trust the cloaked figure? A sudden crashing sound broke my contemplation. The door rattled violently, the darkness seeming to pulse with rage. "Choose," it commanded, and I felt the pressure of its urgency. My mind raced. As the shadows clutched at my ankles, I knew I had to act. I glanced at Liam one last time, hoping to see a sign, but his face was etched with dread. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, a flicker of movement behind the cloaked figure, a glimpse of something pale and ghastly. My breath caught in my throat. That shimmer wasn't just an illusion, it felt almost alive, a reminder of that laughter I'd seen before. With a newfound determination, I stepped closer to the doorway. "I'm not going to let this darkness win," I declared, shaking off the fear. But just then, the figure lunged forward, and everything erupted into chaos. In the chaos, I lost sight of Liam, and a new fear clawed at my insides. The darkness roared around me, and I realized I had run out of time. Something was coming, and I had to make a choice before it was too late. The chaos enveloped me. The darkness surged, a living entity pulling at my limbs. My heart raced as I stumbled back, trying to escape the overwhelming force closing in around me. The figure, once obscured by shadow, rushed toward me, but all I could think was escape or understand. "Make a choice," the cloaked figure commanded, its voice sharp and unyielding. I felt the light behind me falter, the warmth ebbing as an icy grip encircled my heart. It was now or never. As I battled against the fear that threatened to consume me, the flickering light from the doorway seemed to pulse, calling me home in a way that felt undeniable. "Liam!" I shouted, panic flooding my voice. But my desperate plea was met with only silence. I felt a disconnect, as if he were miles away in that moment, lost to me in the shadows. I wrapped my arms around myself, bracing against the wave of insidious whispers that rampaged through the air. They were mocking me, whispering secrets of my past, both enticing and terrifying. I could hear reminders, moments locked deep within me. The laughter, the fading sun, the alarm of goodbyes. I turned back to the swirling light, its brilliance beckoning me forward as I struggled to keep my focus. I knew the figure was still there, watching intently. I could practically feel its gaze at my back like a predator prowling near prey. "I have to know," I whispered, an affirmation of my tension. With a rush of adrenaline, I stepped toward the light, every muscle in my body screaming that the choice was right. I would embrace this truth, whatever it might be. As I crossed into the threshold, I felt a jolt of energy surged through me. The whispers intensified to a deafening roar, then abruptly halted. I was enveloped in a warm, golden glow as my own breath shadowed in wonder. Then, nothing. I found myself in a dimly lit space, an ethereal field alive with color. The air felt charged, almost electric, as I gazed around in incredulity. It felt like an afterimage of a dream, a scene locked in time. I was free, but I was also suspended, caught between what was happening and what had been. The memories washed over me, plucking strings of painful nostalgia. Days spent laughing with friends in the sunlight, the comfort of knowing I was never alone. But lurking just beneath were the shadows, the sudden confrontation, the arguments, and the chaos before everything shattered to pieces. "The moment before," I murmured aloud, grateful for the clarity it offered. But just as clarity came, a figure emerged from the haze, tall, cloaked, and familiar. It was Liam, no longer shrouded in confusion. "You made it," he said softly, relief flooding his voice. I looked around, noticing that the darkness was gone. What happened? I asked, unsure. The clarity I'd sought suddenly felt unsettling. He stepped closer, his expression earnest, yet burdened. You chose to confront the truth. This is where the shadows of your past lead. Why did you come with me? You could have stayed. Because I was part of those shadows too. He paused, eyes heavy with emotion. I couldn't let it take you without knowing that you would be safe. Before I could respond, the space around us began to tremble, the threads of light flickering between us. The ground beneath pulsed with energy. What is this? I gasped, feeling the beautiful haze begin to dissipate. It means there's still work to do, he cautioned. We're not out of danger yet. The connection between us, it's stronger than we realized. A chill surged through me, a reminder of the lurking force that tried to keep me trapped. What do we do? He reached for my hand, the warmth grounding me. We face it together. Whatever lies ahead, we won't lose ourselves to the darkness again. I nodded. The uncertainty gnawed at my insides, but I could see the shadows re-emerging around us, twisting like hungry tendrils from the corners. The connection felt palpable, an urge to push back against the encroaching darkness. Let's go. Side by side, we began to move forward, apprehension mingled with an undeniable sense of solidarity, determination weaving through the space between us. The path ahead remained an unknown, shrouded in ambiguity, traces of the supernatural inextricably intertwined with the echoes of the past, lingering like fog. We'll figure this out, Liam said, squeezing my hand. Yet, even as we stepped forward, a question lodged itself in my mind. Would we truly confront the shadows, or had we only just begun to scrape the surface of a truth yet to be revealed? As we walked into the unknown, my heart swelled with uncertainty, and even though light surrounded us, the lingering echoes of darkness would forever weave through my thoughts, an unresolved tension that whispered, the truth is never complete. I moved to a different city soon after. I could never stay in that house, knowing the secrets of the past lay twisted in that place. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't walked into that field, if I hadn't faced the shadows. But mostly I wonder if I'd ever truly escape the lingering connections that pull at my heart.